They say the sea never forgets. Beneath the waters of Pearl Harbor, a battleship still bleeds. 84 years later, oil rises from the wreck in thin black ribbons, the tears of 1,177 souls who never came home. The story of the USS Arizona is not just about a ship, it's about time standing still, about the moment paradise turned into hell and a nation's heartbeat stopped for a breath that lasted a generation. On the morning of December 7, 1941, the world was quiet. In Hawaii, the sun rose over calm blue waters. Palm trees swayed in a gentle breeze. Aboard the Arizona, sailors woke to another peaceful Sunday. Some polished brass rails. Others wrote letters home. A few young men, barely out of high school, joked about the evening movie showing on base. The smell of coffee and eggs drifted from the mess hall. And then, without warning, the sky tore apart. At 7:55 a.m., the first Japanese planes roared over Oahu. The sound was unlike anything the sailors had ever heard. A screaming thunder that grew closer until the world exploded. Bombs began falling across Pearl Harbor. Battleships that had rested peacefully for years became targets in a storm of fire and steel. The Arizona's crew scrambled to their stations. Alarm bells rang. Voices shouted orders drowned out by roaring engines and gunfire. Men ran barefoot across the scorching deck. Machine guns opened fire at the sky, but the attackers were too many, too fast, too precise. Then, at 8:06 a.m., a single bomb fell directly toward the Arizona. It pierced through her deck, slicing deep into the forward magazine, the compartment storing over 1,000,000 pounds of ammunition. For one terrible instant, there was silence. Then came a flash so bright it turned morning into noon. The explosion tore through the ship like the wrath of God. The Arizona lifted out of the water, split apart, and collapsed in a fireball visible for miles. The force shattered windows on shore. Men were thrown into the harbor like rag dolls. The sound echoed across Oahu, a deep, thunderous crack that marked the moment America was dragged into World War II. In less than 9 minutes, the Arizona was gone. Flames shot more than 500 feet into the sky. The forward half disintegrated. What remained sank quickly, her stern slipping below the surface, her masts still burning. Oil poured across the harbor, thick, black, ablaze. The men aboard never had a chance. Of more than 1,500 crew members, only 334 survived. The rest, 1,177 souls, were trapped inside as she went down. Some died instantly. Others suffocated as fire and smoke filled the corridors. A few were heard pounding from within the hull hours after she sank, sounds that haunted survivors for the rest of their lives. The harbor burned for 2 days. Oil fires raged across the water. Rescue boats moved through smoke, pulling scorched bodies from the waves. The air reeked of burning metal, fuel, and flesh. When divers finally reached the wreck, what they found was beyond comprehension. The Arizona's forward section was obliterated. Steel twisted and melted. Bodies fused to bulkheads. Decks littered with remnants of lives cut short. Helmets, shoes, watches frozen at 8:06. They tried to recover what they could, but soon realized it was hopeless. Too many gone. Too deep. Too dangerous. The ship had become a tomb. The decision was made. The USS Arizona would never be raised. She would remain at the bottom of the harbor, holding her crew forever. Time passed. The war spread across the Pacific. America struck back. The world changed. But beneath the surface of Pearl Harbor, the Arizona remained frozen in December 1941, a rusting monument to a day of fire. Then something unexpected happened. Even after the fires had long been extinguished, the Arizona didn't rest. From her broken hull, Oil began to rise, slowly, silently, in thin black ribbons shimmering against sunlight water. Day after day, year after year. At first, people thought it was a minor leak that would fade, but it didn't. It continued, endlessly, as if the ship was still alive, still bleeding from her wounds. Visitors began to notice. The oil formed dark swirls drifting with the current, staining the water's surface. Veterans who returned to Pearl Harbor began calling them black tears. They said the ship was mourning her crew, that she wept for the men who never came home. It was poetic. It was also true. Scientists later discovered that inside the ship's tanks, over 500,000 gallons of oil remained trapped. Decades later, the leaks have never stopped. Every day, between 2 and 9 quarts rise to the surface, drop by drop, like a heartbeat refusing to fade. Divers who have explored the Arizona describe it as a place of eerie stillness. The hull lies in 2 massive sections, coated in coral and silt. Fish swim through open hatches. Sea turtles glide above her deck. And from deep inside, the oil seeps upward, black, ancient, untouched by time. One diver said it felt like the ship was breathing, inhaling and exhaling through tiny streams of oil rising from her wounds. Another described hearing nothing but his own heartbeat and faint bubbles, each one carrying the memory of men long gone. The Arizona isn't just wreckage. It's a grave, sacred ground. When the war ended, survivors of the Arizona returned home, but many carried a wish that when their time came, their ashes would be returned to their shipmates. The Navy honored that wish. Even today, when an Arizona survivor dies, Navy divers descend into the wreck and place his ashes inside through one of her gun turrets. It's a ceremony of silence. No words, no trumpets, no speeches. Just the faint sound of bubbles rising, the living joining the dead, becoming part of history. Above the wreck, the white memorial stands quietly, a bridge of light stretched over a grave of steel. Built in 1962, it floats gracefully above the water, never touching the ship below. Visitors walk across it in silence. Some cry, some salute. Others stare at oil streaks drifting across the surface. You can smell it, the faint scent of fuel and salt. You can see the glimmer of oil reflecting sky, like souls reaching for sunlight. People say when you stand there long enough, time stops. You don't just see history, you feel it breathing beneath your feet. The Arizona bleeds still, and maybe she always will, because the sea remembers. It remembers the fire, the screams, the silence that followed. And with every drop of oil that surfaces, every black tear spreading across the water, it whispers the same truth. Freedom was never free, and even the strongest steel carries the weight of sacrifice. Even after all these decades, the USS Arizona is not silent. She speaks through ripples of water, through the smell of oil hanging over the memorial, through whispers of wind passing over white marble walls engraved with names. Each letter, each drop, each glimmer, carries a story, a moment frozen on December 7, 1941, that never thawed. Tourists come from all over the world to see her. Some are veterans, walking slowly with canes, wearing caps embroidered with names of ships long gone. Some are schoolchildren who learned about Pearl Harbor only from books. Some are sons and daughters of men who never came home, their faces reflecting both pride and pain as they stare into the water. When boats arrive at the memorial, people go quiet. Chatter fades. Phones lower. Laughter dies away. Because the moment you step inside, you feel it. A presence. A heaviness, wrapped not in fear, but in reverence. Below your feet lies a world sealed by fire and time. The rusted hull, the twisted metal, rooms that once echoed with life, now swallowed by the sea. The oil rises slowly, almost deliberately, as if the ship knows people are watching. Some visitors say they see faces in the reflection. Others say it's imagination. But those who have truly been there will tell you the same thing. You can feel them. The sailors who never left. The boys who never grew old. One survivor once said, "Every drop of oil is a soul trying to tell its story." For those who escaped that day, life was never the same. The Arizona survivors carried memories like shadows that never left. They lived, but part of them remained in that harbor. Many could still smell the oil, still hear the screams, still see the sky burning. Some spoke of guilt, the unbearable guilt of survival. They had brothers below, friends they'd shared laughs and cigarettes with the night before, now gone in a single flash. Yet they lived on, built lives, had families, grew old. But every year on December 7th, they returned, to stand once again over their ship, over their friends, and look down at the black tears still rising. Each year the ceremonies grew smaller. Fewer survivors remained to tell the story. Their voices became softer, their salutes slower. But their message never changed. Remember, don't let this fade. The Arizona became more than a war grave. She became a heartbeat of memory, a living symbol of sacrifice and endurance. Historians and engineers have long debated how long she'll last. Salt water eats everything. Corrosion has consumed much of the hull. Inside, metal flakes away like ash. Scientists estimate that by century's end, most of the Arizona will collapse into silt, swallowed by the sea she guards. And yet, the oil keeps rising. It's almost as if she refuses to disappear. When researchers studied the leak, they were astonished. Even after 8 decades, oil remains trapped in her tanks, thick and pressurized, defying decay. No one knows exactly how much is left. Some say hundreds of thousands of gallons still rest below. The Navy calls it a ticking time capsule, yet they will never remove it. Because to touch the Arizona is to disturb a grave. So they watch, they measure, they study, but they do not interfere. The oil will rise until it stops on its own, until the ship decides she has wept. In the memorial's quiet hall, names of the fallen cover the wall, a sea of white stone, each name carved into eternity. People leave flowers, medals, and folded flags at the base. Sometimes a widow places her hand on her husband's name and whispers something only he would understand. The sound of waves echoes softly through open windows. Sunlight filters through, reflecting off water and dancing across marble. It feels almost sacred, like the ocean itself is carrying those names back to the men below. You stand there and realize this place is not about death. It's about remembrance, connection, the way the past refuses to be forgotten. Because every time a visitor stands above that wreck and stares into the water, history comes alive. The war, the loss, the courage, it all breathes through the surface. The Arizona Memorial isn't just an artifact, it's a living conversation between generations. Children who visit often ask their parents, "Why does it still leak?" And the answer, whispered softly, is always the same. Because they're still here. For some, the oil represents sorrow. For others, resilience. A symbol that even in destruction, something endures. A heartbeat, a message, a promise. Scientists have nicknamed the leaks the tears of the Arizona, but veterans who stand there know better. They call it her soul. They say she's still protecting them, still reminding the world what it cost to wake a nation. And perhaps that's why the oil never stops, because forgetting would be the final death, and the Arizona refuses to die. When you look closely at slicks on the water, they shimmer with color. Blues, greens, purples, golds, almost beautiful if you forget what they are. They catch sunlight and reflect sky, a strange and haunting reminder that tragedy can be both terrible and magnificent. Photographers try to capture it, but no image does it justice. You have to see it, to stand there in silence, to feel the weight pressing down. The hum of wind, the quiet lapping of sea, that faint smell of oil clinging to your skin. You leave the memorial changed, not dramatically, but quietly, deeply. You realize you've just stood over a wound that never healed, over a story that still bleeds. Some nights when the harbor is still, the reflection of the memorial glows on water like a ghost. Locals say you can sometimes hear faint sounds, the echo of footsteps, a whisper carried by wind, the ghostly pulse of a ship refusing to fade. Sailors stationed nearby often visit on days off. They stand in silence, saluting the wreck below. Many say it reminds them why they serve, because beneath those calm waters lies a reminder that peace was paid for in blood and fire. The USS Arizona is more than history. It's emotion carved into steel. The silence after an explosion, the heartbeat beneath the ocean. Decades later, the survivors who returned to rest within her have nearly all passed. Only a handful remain, men in their late 90s, voices fragile but firm when they speak of that day. They know they're the last witnesses to something the world must never forget. One of them once said, "When I die, take me home. My home's down there." And when his ashes were carried into the water, released through the gun turret, the oil rose to meet him, like the ship welcoming back one of her sons. It's a scene repeated again and again, a folded flag, a salute, a quiet descent into the deep. And as ashes mix with silt and oil, another sailor returns to eternity. Above the memorial, tourists still take photos, children still ask questions. The world keeps spinning, but below, time stands still. The Arizona doesn't know the year, or headlines, or passing generations. She only knows the silence of her men and the endless rhythm of the sea. The water has claimed her, but not her memory. Salt eats the steel, but cannot erase the sacrifice. The oil leaks, but it is not just pollution. It's poetry written in black ink across the waves. They say every drop that surfaces is a message. We're still here. Don't forget us. And maybe that's why people keep coming. To remember, to bear witness, to see with their own eyes what war leaves behind when fire fades and smoke clears. The Arizona isn't just a relic of World War II. She's a reminder that loss and honor can coexist, that even in ruin there is beauty, and even in death there is legacy. So long as her black tears rise, the Arizona breathes. She tells her story through the ocean, softly, endlessly, to anyone willing to listen. And someday, when the leaks finally stop, when the last drop rises to the surface and fades into the Pacific sun, perhaps that will be the moment she's finally at peace. Until then, the sea will keep her secret, and the Arizona will keep weeping, drop by drop, memory by memory, reminding the living that beneath the calmest waters lie the loudest ghosts. Beneath the calm waters of Pearl Harbor, 1,177 sailors still sleep inside their ship. Their names are carved in marble above, but their story lives in the oil that rises, in waves that lap against the memorial, and in hearts of those who stand there and watch. It's not just a leak, it's a pulse, a reminder that some wounds never close and some souls never leave. The USS Arizona is not gone. She's just waiting, watching, remembering. And as long as her black tears rise to the surface, the world will never truly forget the day she died. Because the sea never forgets.